Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, and what was supposed to be the final Nightmare on Elm Street film. We'll also be talking about its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out in the Nightmare on Elm Street 7 film collection. But before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to give a quick film review, and today is no different. So if you don't want to know anything about the film Freddy's Dead and you're just here for that 4K Blu-ray review, you guys can skip ahead right now. So back in 1991, 2 years after Dream Child was released, of course they decided to go back to the well and make one more Nightmare on Elm Street movie. If Dream Child was coming out at the very end of the slasher craze, then this one was really coming out after it had already died. The early 1990s, from about 1991 to 1996, were not very known for their horror films, even though some very good horror films came out during that era. You know, the horror genre itself was kind of seen as a dying breed, which is really crazy if you look at it today. The horror genre is one of the most popular genres. I would even say it is the most popular genre because horror fans always come out for the films no matter what they are. One of the highest grossing films of 2025 is The Conjuring Last Rites. You know what? The name carries value, just like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise name carried value. Even if their returns weren't very high at this point, they were still getting money. They were still making money. They were really cheap to make. They even brought in a first-time director in Rachel Talalay, who I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She also did the story for this movie. She didn't do the screenplay, but she was the one who came up with the story for this movie. She had been working with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise for a while. She was a producer on Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and because Bob Shea, you know, the guy who made New Line Cinema, the head of New Line Cinema, had actually directed his first film before this, she thought it'd be a good time for her to say, hey, I would like to direct the next Nightmare on Elm Street film. Of course, though, she was going to be saddled with the 3D effects, so she had to work with that, but that was a big deal in getting this movie financed. Anything to get acid in seats at the time. And, you know, they're pitching this as the last Nightmare on Elm Street film. And I thought she actually did a very good job. Most people consider this the worst Nightmare on Elm Street film, and I understand why. I think Dream Child is much, much worse than this. They kind of focus a little bit more on this movie. They know exactly what kind of movie they were making. You know, this is very much a comedy. It's not like the last film, which really just couldn't pick a lane. Was it a gothic horror film, or was it going to be a comedy film? They just really didn't know. They couldn't get the tone right with Dream Child. This one, it's a full-blown comedy. Everybody knows what movie they're in. Even at the very beginning, one of the first scenes you see in this movie is a play on The Wizard of Oz, and of course Freddy Krueger's there on a broomstick, banging out one-liners, which is basically what Robert Englund is doing at this time, overusing the word bitch.
Get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too.
You know, that really is something you think is just made up. Like, he can't be doing that much. But between this and Dream Child, he really excessively uses the word bitch way too much, to the point that Rick and Morty made a character called Scary Terry who uses that at the end of every single sentence he says, which is absolutely hysterical, spoofing on what Freddy Krueger became, which is a far cry from the Freddy Krueger of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Which, you know what? For me, I still really like this movie. I understand why people hate it, but I still very much enjoy this movie. Is nostalgia playing a part with that? Yes, it is. My family, just for some reason, I don't know what it was, we always just had the shitty sequels, and because of that, I learned to enjoy them. Whether it be Speed 2, Cruise Control, or Freddy's Dead, I watched this more than most of the other Nightmare on Elm Street films, and because of that, I knew it from back to front. I appreciated it. It had some big laughs in this movie. I always knew it was a comedy. I mean, they have Roseanne and Tom Arnold in this movie. They bring back Johnny Depp from the original film, which is a pretty cool cameo, playing in like, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. And then, of course, Freddy shows up, and it doesn't even matter, but still great. We even have the Nintendo Power Glove. Now you're playing with power. We have all of that, and yet this movie still draws in a couple big names, mainly Yaphet Kotto, who is one of the all-time great underrated actors. I mean, this guy is an alien. He's in Midnight Run. He's in Blue Collars. He is a phenomenal actor who's worked with some phenomenal directors, but for some reason, he's in this movie, and I'm pretty sure he's wearing a wig, and it's not a good one. And if that's just his regular hair, then I'm sorry, Yaphet, it's not working. But it looks like a wig, a bad wig. The other recognizable face is Breckin Meyer. You recognized him from movies like Clueless, and for me, he'll always be from Rat Race. I love him from Rat Race. He's one of the creators of Robot Chicken, I believe. But he's in this movie very young, playing a stoner yet again. He just always used to get typecast as a stoner. It works for him, but he's one of those characters. He's the one that's basically in Freddy's video game as the Nintendo character, bouncing all over the set. Because the set pieces, they might be a little bit of a step down from Dream Child, but they're a little bit more focused. The whole movie is a little bit more focused. The story makes a little bit more sense, dealing with Freddy, this time needing to get back in the real world. He needs help from his child. Oh, look at this. Freddy's got a kid. At first we think it's a boy, but it actually turns out to be his daughter, who's played by Lisa Zane in this movie, who's actually Billy Zane's sister, which I did not know until I was doing research for this movie. So that was pretty surprising to find out. Didn't expect. And you know what? I don't know how I didn't notice. They do look very similar. And she's actually a very good actress. And I think, because of who the director was, she wanted a strong female character. And I thought they did a pretty good job. Now, the acting is going to win no awards. Is it a step up from Dream Child? Ever so slightly, but still a step up nonetheless. And I just think there's some stuff in this movie that does really work, just because it knows how silly the movie is. Now, at the very end of Dream Child had some very bad effects in it, but the very last 3D effect in this is absolutely atrocious. My God, when they finally kill Freddy, and, the director talked about this, like, she had to do this, but my God, the effects, the CGI, just because they needed it to be in 3D, looks absolutely horrible. And then right after that, we have the very last closing line, Freddy's dead, and that's it, we're out of there. And I can see why people don't like this movie, but if all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies feel like they're a product of the 1980s, this came out in the early 1990s, and they were apparently very influenced by Twin Peaks. And you know what? It kind of shows in the movie, just the way the movie looks. It feels like an early 1990s movie in tone and the clothes they're wearing. And that's another reason why I've kind of enjoyed this movie more than Dream Child, which, again, it's a big jump in quality in my opinion, but there are people who really love Dream Child. It's just, after watching, I was just very bored while watching that, and I am never bored while watching Freddy's Dead. It's not a flawless film. In fact, it's a very flawed film, but I think it's a very enjoyable film, like most of the Nightmare on Elm Street films are. I think you can get at least something out of each and every single one of them. I just think that this one is a particularly good time that you can enjoy during spooky season. But we're also here to talk about its 4K Blu-ray, and that's what we're going to do right now.
Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare.
Alright, so we're on the 6th film here, so you know how this works. I'm going to come over to my beautiful Nightmare on Elm Street 4K Steelbook collection. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to reach for Freddy's Dead. And of course, there's the original movie poster art, which you can see right behind me as well. We got it on that flat matte background, which I think works very nice. A little bit of artwork on the back, very similar to all the other designs, nothing different. You come inside, you get one 4K Blu-ray disc, but the big thing is you do have a pair of 3D glasses. Very cheesy, not that great 3D glasses, but they do work because you can watch this movie in 2D or 3D. Of course, I chose to watch it in 2D because 3D makes me sick, but I did check that out to see if the 3D worked. It's pretty cool. Of course, it's not something that sells me on the movie. It's never been something that sold me on the movie. I do like seeing movies where the 3D effects, like Friday the 13th Part 3, where that stuff is like built into the movie now, so you never can unsee it. You know what they were going for, but unless you really saw this in theaters back in the day, do you really appreciate those 3D effects? I just can't say I necessarily do. But if you want to check it out with those 3D glasses, you can do that. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that they gave you the option. That's really what we care about, is the options here. As far as the extras go, this is probably the most bare bones of all the 4K Blu-rays when it comes to extras. My God, there's 4 interviews on here, and I think if you put them all together, they might add up to 6 minutes. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, some of that information I got was very informative for my actual film review, so I appreciate it. But it's nothing new like all these 4K Blu-rays. Haven't had anything new on it. So, I don't know. I'm glad that they're there. It just felt very lazy. And again, I understand because the interviews for both this and Freddy's Dead kind of start off with them apologizing for the stories and how they pretty much ran out of ideas and they just had to find a way to like get these movies made because, again, they're made for so cheap and no matter what, they're financially successful. The story and plot is just second to everything else. And in Freddy's Dead, I think it's more noticeable in this. Like in Freddy's Dead, it's all about the kill sequences. Fuck the plot. Let's just make sure these kill sequences look really cool. And they usually do, but it's just not enough of a movie. I think Freddy's Dead at least is consistent and fun throughout the entire thing. But you heard all that in my film review. But anyway, getting no new extras, a little bit disappointing. Now, when you get to the audio, it's a pretty damn big upgrade like all the other ones. We're going to a brand new Dolby Atmos Atmos track, while also having the option for the original audio track if that's something that you're into. So I think it's pretty cool that they've been doing that. The Dolby Atmos track, I would say a slight step down from the audio on the past two 4K Blu-rays. Even I would say Dream Warriors, if I'm being honest, I would probably say this might be the weakest one since like maybe Nightmare 2, but still a very kick-ass Dolby Atmos track, still very high quality. If you've liked the audio track so far, I think you'll like this one. Now, the visuals. This film was shot very differently from the previous two films. Now, it feels more 1990s in tone, but it also feels much warmer, much yellower, even if you were to watch it on the previously released Blu-ray, which I do have right here, and that's what I compared it to. It looks much flatter on the Blu-ray as well, like just, we sucked the color out of it, but you can see that the movie itself was actually shot with a warmer color tone, so now the 4K Blu-ray, it looks much, much warmer, but there are scenes that kind of look a little too yellow, and the skin looks a little bit unnatural, like we've kind of talked about in the past with some 4K Blu-rays having that like overuse of like oranges and yellow, and I think this is one of those areas. Now, I don't think that Warner Brothers did anything different. I just think it's because of the way the film itself was actually shot. So I don't think that the quality is much different from the previously released 4K Blu-rays. It's just that it's going to be kind of noticeable in certain scenes, just the way that it's lit, and the skin just might look a little bit off. But still, a very high quality visual showpiece like all of these Warner Brothers 4K Blu-rays have been so far. Definitely a pretty damn noticeable jump from the Blu-ray to the 4K Blu-ray when it comes to both visuals and audio. Again, just minor complaints about the extras, but this is still a very good 4K Blu-ray release. And if I was going to give Freddys Dead on 4K Blu-ray Steelbook a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo, Ben Rondo, and Harvey Scott, you can do that, or you can even become a channel director like Nicholas Head, Kevin Kruger, Uncle V, Frank from Frank's Media Reviews, and Stone Gasman, or you can even bump it up to the channel bankroll members like Mr. Smelly Potato. But of course, if you have no money to throw my way, I don't mind at all. I just hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.